The rain had finally ceased just a few hours before the funeral commenced, leaving the sky a somber gray that perfectly echoed the crushing heaviness in Gregory Wellingham's heart. As a renowned billionaire venture capitalist, Gregory had built an empire from nothing, turning innovative startups into global powerhouses with his sharp intellect and unyielding drive. He was the kind of man who graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, celebrated for his strategic investments in tech, biotech, and renewable energy that had amassed him a fortune in the tens of billions, allowing him to live in opulent estates across the world, from a sprawling mansion in Silicon Valley to a private island retreat in the Caribbean. Yet none of that success mattered now, as he stood motionless in his impeccably tailored black suit, his usually steady hands quivering uncontrollably at his sides, staring at the unthinkable sight before him. His only child, his 7-year-old son, Liam, lying still in a polished mahogany casket lined with soft white silk. Liam looked so peaceful, almost like he was merely sleeping after a long day of play. His favorite blue button-up shirt neatly pressed, a small toy spaceship clutched in his tiny hands, as if ready for another adventure. His curly brown hair tousled just the way he liked it, framing a face that was the spitting image of Gregory's own youth, full of innocence and boundless curiosity. Gregory hadn't uttered a single word since the devastating news arrived the day before, when the hospital staff had delivered Liam's lifeless body back to the estate. He'd signed the necessary paperwork with a numb detachment, his expression carved from granite, but inside a storm raged endlessly, replaying the doctor's cold pronouncement over and over. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wellingham, there was nothing more we could do." His heart stopped suddenly at around mid-afternoon, due to an undiagnosed arrhythmia. Gregory had refused to fully accept it, clinging to a sliver of denial, even as the reality pressed down like an iron weight, for Liam had been his everything. The light that pierced through the boardroom battles and high-stakes deals, the boy who would run into his arms after school with stories of building forts and dreaming of becoming an astronaut, the child who made Gregory believe in something beyond profits and power. Now, in the grand private mausoleum on the Wellingham estate grounds, a marble-clad sanctuary surrounded by manicured gardens and ancient oaks that whispered in the faint wind, the air thick with the scent of lilies and polished stone. The walls reverberated with hushed murmurs and stifled sobs from the assembled mourners, family members, close business associates, and a few select friends who had flown in from around the globe to pay their respects. Gregory's wife Elena stood nearby, her elegant black dress clinging to her frame as she dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her composure cracking under the strain of losing their miracle child, the one they had fought so hard to have after years of fertility struggles. His brother Marcus paced subtly in the background, ever the pragmatic one, handling the logistics with a forced stoicism, while distant relatives and colleagues exchanged sympathetic glances, their conversations a low hum of condolences like, "He was such a bright kid," and "Gregory will never be the same." The casket was positioned on a raised dais, under soft, diffused lighting that cast ethereal shadows flanked by floral arrangements towering like silent guardians, white roses symbolizing purity, blue hydrangeas for Liam's favorite color, and a single red carnation from Gregory himself, representing his undying love. Gregory's knees threatened to buckle as he gazed at Liam's serene face, memorizing every freckle, every eyelash, willing time to reverse his mind, flashing back to just days ago, when Liam had been full of life, laughing as they tossed a baseball in the backyard, his son's infectious giggle echoing through the estate like music. But now that vitality was stolen, replaced by an eerie stillness that clawed at Gregory's soul, making him question every decision, every late night at the office that robbed him of precious moments. Then, amid the solemnity, a faint sound disrupted the quiet, soft, deliberate footsteps, echoing off the marble floors, drawing every eye in the room. Heads turned in unison as a small figure emerged through the ornate archway. A dusty little girl no more than 6 years old, her skin a rich ebony tone, covered in a layer of grime from the streets barefoot, with calloused soles that spoke of endless wandering, dressed in faded pink overalls that hung loosely on her slender frame. A heart-shaped pendant dangling from a thin chain around her neck, swaying gently with each step. She had no coat to shield her from the chill, no guardian by her side, and she clearly didn't belong in this world of wealth and privilege. Yet, her deep, soulful eyes that held a wisdom far beyond her years, fixed intently on Liam's form in the casket, as if drawn by an invisible force. Marcus Gregory's brother reacted first, stepping forward with a mix of confusion and protectiveness, his voice low but firm. "Hey, who let this kid in here? This is a private service. Someone get security." Whispers rippled through the crowd like a wave. Guests exchanging puzzled looks, some clutching their pearls or adjusting their ties uncomfortably, wondering how a homeless child had breached the estate's formidable gates and guards, perhaps slipping through during the earlier chaos of arrivals. But before anyone could intervene, the girl continued forward, undeterred, her bare feet padding softly against the cold stone, approaching the casket with a quiet determination that silenced the room further. She reached out a tiny, trembling hand and placed it gently over Liam's folded ones, her fingers brushing his skin as if sensing a hidden pulse that eluded everyone else. Gregory jolted from his stupor, moved toward her, his voice hoarse and laced with bewilderment. "Wait, what are you doing? Who are you?" The girl didn't avert her gaze from Liam, her voice emerging soft yet resolute, carrying through the mausoleum like a clarion call. "He's not dead." The words hung in the air, slicing through the murmurs and drawing sharp gasps from the mourners. A woman in the back dropped her program, fluttering to the floor. The estate's butler stumbled slightly against a pillar. Elena's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Gregory blinked rapidly, his heart skipping a beat, as if electrocuted. "What did you just say?" The girl finally looked up, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that pierced his defenses. "He's not dead. Not really. Not yet." Questions erupted from the crowd. Who is this child? Where are her parents? This must be some kind of mistake. But the girl remained unfazed, her focus returning to Liam as she added quietly, "He's breathing, but it's so slow you can't see it. His heart is still there, just quiet." Dr. Mason Rudd, the elderly physician with his signature white hair and crisp blue shirt, who had been lingering near the rear of the gathering, the very doctor who had pronounced Liam dead and signed the certificate, paled visibly, his face draining of color as he muttered under his breath, "That's impossible. That's just not possible." Gregory whipped around to face him, his voice sharpening. "Do you know this girl, Mason?" Rudd hesitated, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of his jacket, avoiding direct eye contact. "No, I've never seen her before in my life." Yet there was a twitch in his expression, a subtle unease that didn't escape Gregory's notice, fueling a spark of doubt in the billionaire's mind. The tension thickened like fog rolling in the air, charged with disbelief and intrigue. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering theories about a prank or a delusion, while others stared wide-eyed at the casket, half expecting a miracle or fearing a breakdown. Elena approached cautiously, her maternal instincts clashing with skepticism. "Sweetie, this isn't the time for games. Liam is gone and you're upsetting everyone." But the girl shook her head firmly, her pendant catching the light as she reached into her pocket and withdrew a small hand-carved wooden rocket, no larger than her palm. "He gave me this by the fountain, a couple days before the museum trip. He said it was magic, that it could fly to the stars." Gregory's breath caught. Liam had mentioned a little friend with a necklace who makes toys from scraps. But Gregory had dismissed it as a schoolyard pal, never imagining it was a street child his son had befriended in secret. The girl continued, her voice steady despite her youth. "He found me under the bench in the park, gave me some fruit from his lunch. Said he'd tell his daddy to help kids like me build places where we could sleep safe." His tears pricked at Gregory's eyes, a flood of memories surging Liam's compassionate nature, always sneaking treats to stray animals, or donating his allowance to causes he barely understood. "And then I saw him fall at the museum," the girl went on, pointing subtly toward Dr. Rudd. "They pushed me away when I tried to help, and that old man said he was gone. But I touched his hand. He was still warm and he squeezed just a little." Rudd's composure cracked further, sweat beading on his forehead. "This is absurd. The child is clearly distraught or mistaken. We followed all protocols." Gregory's mind raced, piecing together fragments, the doctor's insistence on no second opinion, the rush to release the body, the odd warmth he'd felt when kissing Liam's forehead goodbye. The mausoleum felt smaller, the walls closing in as the girl's words ignited a fragile hope amid the grief challenging everything Gregory thought he knew about loss and finality. Guests murmured in clusters now, some pulling out phones discreetly to record the bizarre scene, others backing away, as if the girl's presence carried an otherworldly aura. Marcus tried again to intervene, reaching for the girl's arm gently. "Come on, kid, let's get you out of here and find your folks." But she pulled back, her eyes pleading with Gregory. "Please, believe me, he's waiting for someone to listen." Gregory knelt slowly, his suit creasing against the stone floor, torn between rationality and the desperate pull of paternal love, his voice barely above a whisper. How do you know this?" The girl placed the wooden rocket on Liam's chest, closing her eyes briefly, as if in silent prayer, and in that moment, a hush fell over the room, every breath held in anticipation of what might come next, the billionaire's world teetering on the edge of revelation or heartbreak. The air grew heavier, charged with unspoken questions. Could this ragged child hold the key to unraveling the tragedy, or was she merely a cruel twist of fate, amplifying the pain? Gregory's heart pounded, echoing in his ears like a drumbeat, as he stared at his son's face anew, searching for any sign, any flicker that might confirm the impossible. Elena clutched Gregory's shoulder, her nails digging in slightly, a mix of fear and faint hope in her eyes. "Greg, what if she's right?" But before he could respond, the girl's hand trembled on Liam's, and a subtle shift, a barely perceptible rise in the boy's chest, sent a ripple of gasps through the crowd, amplifying the chaos. Dr. Rudd stepped back against the wall, his face ashen, muttering defenses. Vitals were flat, no response to stimuli. This can't be on. Yet doubt crept into his tone, betraying the cracks in his certainty. The mourners, a tapestry of high society in their finest attire, now resembled a frozen tableau, their polished facades shattered by the intrusion of the unexpected. Gregory's mind whirled with flashbacks, Liam's last morning bounding down the stairs with boundless energy, hugging him tightly before school. The frantic call from the museum chaperone about the collapse, the sterile hospital room where machines beeped their finality. How had it come to this, a stranger's child challenging the edicts of medicine and mourning? The girl's presence, so out of place yet profoundly fitting in its raw humanity, forced Gregory to confront the barriers his wealth had built, walls that isolated him from the world's overlooked corners. As the tension built to a crescendo with whispers turning to urgent discussions, Gregory realized this moment could redefine everything, a pivot from despair to something unimaginable, all hinging on the words of a homeless girl who dared to speak truth in a room full of silence. And just as the weight of it all threatened to overwhelm him, the girl whispered again, her voice cutting through the din. "He's calling for you inside. Listen close." The mausoleum's heavy silence shattered like fragile glass in the wake of the little girl's startling declaration, her small hand still resting atop Liam's, as if anchoring him to the world of the living, while Gregory Wellingham knelt frozen on the cold marble floor, his mind reeling from the impossible words that had just escaped her lips, words that dared to challenge the finality of death itself, igniting a spark of desperate hope in his chest, amidst the sea of skepticism rippling through the gathered mourners. Elena, his wife, clutched at his arm, now her fingers digging in with a mix of fear and fragile belief, whispering urgently, "Greg, this can't be real, can it?" As the crowd's murmurs swelled into a cacophony of confusion, some guests edging closer for a better look, while others recoiled, phones subtly raised to capture the unfolding drama that felt more like a scripted thriller than a somber funeral. Dr. Mason Rudd pressed against the far wall with his white hair disheveled from nervous raking fingers stammered out a defense, his voice cracking under the scrutiny. "This is preposterous. The boy's vitals were non-existent. No pulse, no brain activity. We ran every test." But his eyes darted evasively, betraying a flicker of uncertainty that Gregory, with his honed instincts from countless boardroom negotiations, immediately latched onto like a lifeline. The girl, undeterred by the chaos swirling around her, kept her gaze fixed on Liam's peaceful face, her voice cutting through the noise once more, with a quiet conviction. "He told me about the stars, how he'd build a rocket one day and take me along. Said his daddy could make anything happen." Gregory's breath hitched, a flood of memories crashing over him as he recalled Liam's bedtime stories, the boys' wide-eyed wonder at the night sky visible from their estate's observatory, where they'd spent evenings pointing out constellations like Orion and the Big Dipper, Liam's little finger tracing patterns while dreaming aloud about exploring distant planets. But intertwined with those recollections were vague mentions of a special friend who'd appeared in Liam's tales over the past few weeks. A kid who lived outside, but not really, with a shiny necklace and hands that made magic from trash stories Gregory had brushed off as imaginative play with a classmate, never probing deeper amid his hectic schedule of venture capital pitches and international calls that kept him globe-trotting from New York to Tokyo. Now, as the girl's words hung in the air, those overlooked details sharpened into focus, painting a picture of his son's secret compassion, a side of Liam that mirrored Gregory's own rags-to-riches backstory, rising from a modest Midwest upbringing to billionaire status through sheer grit, yet somehow fostering in his child a humility Gregory himself had long since armored against. The girl, Jade, as she'd introduce herself later in a whisper, began to unravel the thread of their hidden connection, her story unfolding like a delicate tapestry woven from moments stolen in the shadows of privilege. "It started," she explained, "on a crisp afternoon in the expansive public park bordering the Wellingham estate, where Liam, during a school outing, had wandered off from his group near the ornate fountain with its splashing waters and bronze statues of mythical creatures. There, under a weathered bench partially hidden by overgrown bushes, he'd spotted Jade curled up in a makeshift nest of discarded newspapers and a tattered blanket, her small form shivering against the encroaching chill as she clutched her heart-shaped pendant for comfort, a trinket scavenged from a forgotten lost-and-found bin that she believed held protective powers passed down from a grandmother she barely remembered. Liam, with his innate kindness that often led him to rescue injured birds or share his snacks with squirrels, had approached without hesitation, his toy spaceship in hand, as he knelt down and offered half of his peanut butter sandwich, saying softly, "Hey, you look hungry, wanna share? My mom makes the best ones." Jade, wary from a life on the streets where trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, had eyed him suspiciously. At first, her experiences with adults who shooed her away or called authorities making her skittish, but Liam's genuine smile and lack of judgment melted her defenses. They talked for what felt like hours, but was mere minutes before his chaperone called him back, about dreams of flying, about how Jade carved tiny figures from bottle caps and sticks to sell for scraps, about Liam's big house with rooms full of toys he wished he could share. He promised to come back, and he did, sneaking out during family picnics or after school hours, bringing bits of food, a warm scarf once, and always his infectious enthusiasm, vowing one day to tell his daddy about building a huge house for all the kids who sleep outside, with beds and games and no more cold. Gregory listened transfixed as Jade recounted these encounters, her voice painting vivid scenes that made his heart ache with regret for not noticing the subtle changes in Liam, the extra fruit missing from his lunchbox, the excited whispers about a secret mission, moments where his son's altruism shone untainted by the cynicism that wealth often bred. The mourners, drawn into the narrative despite themselves, leaned in closer, the initial shock giving way to a collective empathy, with Elena wiping tears as she realized Liam's compassionate streak echoed her own volunteer work at local shelters, something she'd encouraged in him from toddlerhood. But Jade's tale darkened as she shifted to the fateful day at the museum, her eyes clouding with the memory. It was during a class field trip to the Grand Natural History exhibit, with its towering dinosaur skeletons and interactive displays on space exploration, that Liam adored. Jade, who had followed him there from the park on a whim, blending into the crowds as best she could, in her ragged clothes, watched from afar as Liam marveled at a meteorite display, his face alight with wonder, until suddenly, without warning, he clutched his chest and crumpled to the floor amid gasps from classmates and teachers. Chaos erupted. Chaperones rushed in, pushing Jade aside roughly when she tried to approach, dismissing her as a street urchin causing trouble. One adult even snarling, "Get out of here! This isn't your business!" as paramedics arrived and whisked Liam away in a blur of sirens and flashing lights. But Jade, persistent in her loyalty, had trailed the ambulance on foot as far as she could, sneaking into the hospital's bustling emergency wing later that evening by hiding behind supply carts, where she overheard snippets of conversation, doctors mentioning an arrhythmia, beds filling up fast due to a citywide flu outbreak, straining resources. And when she finally glimpsed Liam through a cracked door, pale on a gurney, she darted in just long enough to touch his hand, feeling a faint warmth and what she swore was a tiny twitch, a whisper of life that the machines hadn't detected. "He squeezed back just a little," Jade insisted, now her voice trembling with the weight of the secret she'd carried alone. "But they pulled me out and said he was gone? That old man there?" She pointed accusingly at Dr. Rudd, who flinched visibly. "He signed papers real quick and told everyone to clear the room." Rudd's sweat, now glistening on his brow under the mausoleum's lights, interjected sharply. "The hospital was overwhelmed. Protocols demand efficiency. We couldn't tie up resources on a lost cause, and all indicators pointed to irreversible cardiac arrest." But his excuses rang hollow, laced with defensiveness that hinted at deeper flaws in the system. The pressure from administrators to rotate beds amid budget cuts and overcrowding decisions that prioritized numbers over nuance a reality Gregory knew all too well from his investments in healthcare startups aiming to streamline such processes, ironically contributing to the very haste that nearly sealed his son's fate. Gregory's gaze hardened on Rudd, piecing together the doctor's reluctance for a second opinion. The rushed cremation recommendation to avoid prolonged suffering, words that now reeked of convenience rather than care. Tension coiled tighter in the room, the air thick with accusation as guests began murmuring about lawsuits and inquiries. Marcus pulling out his phone to alert the family lawyer discreetly. Jade, sensing the shift, reached for her pendant, and then placed the wooden rocket, the one Liam had whittled from a stick, during one of their park meetings, gently on his chest beside the toy spaceship, closing her eyes as if channeling some unseen force. He said, "If you believe enough, magic happens, like in the stories." And in that suspended moment, as skepticism battled budding faith, a subtle change rippled through the casket, a faint flutter of Liam's eyelids, or perhaps a shallow breath so imperceptible it could be illusion, but enough to elicit fresh gasps from the crowd. Elena crying out, "Oh God, did you see that?" While Gregory's world narrowed to his son's face, hope surging like a tidal wave against the shores of despair, the girl's revelations unraveling the fabric of accepted truth and forcing everyone to confront the possibility that life clung on in the shadows, waiting for someone to notice. Dr. Rudd backed further away, his authority crumbling. This is hysteria, environmental factors, perhaps a draft. But his protests faded under the growing scrutiny as more eyes fixed on Liam, searching for confirmation of the miraculous. Jade opened her eyes, meeting Gregory's with unwavering resolve. "He's been waiting for you to hear him through me." The billionaire, tears streaming unchecked, now felt the foundations of his logical empire shake. For in this child's tale lay not just secrets from the past, but a bridge to a future. He thought, lost forever, the suspicion deepening that Rudd's haste masked negligence born of systemic flaws. Gregory vowed silently to dismantle if given the chance. The mausoleum, once a tomb of grief, now pulsed with electric anticipation, every second stretching. As the group hovered on the precipice of revelation, the girl's story weaving doubt into the narrative of death, compelling belief where none had existed moments before. The mausoleum erupted into pandemonium as the subtle flutter on Liam's chest, a barely there rise and fall that could no longer be dismissed as a trick of the light or collective imagination, sent shockwaves through the assembled mourners, their gasps echoing off the marble walls like thunderclaps in a storm, transforming the once somber sanctuary into a whirlwind of frantic activity and disbelief. Elena let out a strangled cry, her hands flying to her mouth as she stumbled forward, nearly collapsing against the casket's edge. He's breathing. Greg, look!" While guests scattered in confusion, some fumbling for their phones to dial emergency services, others backing away as if witnessing a supernatural event, whispers turning to shouts of call an ambulance, and this can't be happening. Gregory, his knees still pressed to the cold floor, stared in stunned awe at his son's face, where color seemed to creep back into pale cheeks. A faint warmth radiating from the skin he'd thought forever chilled. His venture capitalist mind, trained to analyze data and predict outcomes, short-circuited in the face of this anomaly. But paternal instinct surged forward, propelling him to action as he barked orders with the authority that had built his empire. "Everyone back up, give him space. Marcus, get the paramedics here now and tell them it's urgent, no delays." His brother nodded sharply, already on his phone, relaying the estate's address to dispatchers who sounded equally bewildered over the line. "Yes, you heard right. The boy in the casket is showing signs of life. Send a full team immediately." Dr. Mason Rudd, cornered against the wall like a trapped animal, stammered incoherently, his white hair matted with sweat,
face flushed red. This
must be some post-mortem reflex, a gasp or rigor reversal. I've seen cases in textbooks, but never, yet his excuses dissolved under Gregory's piercing glare. The billionaire rising to his full height, voice booming with a mix of fury and exhilaration. You call it whatever you want, Mason, but my son is alive, and if you'd listened earlier, we wouldn't be here. The chaos amplified as staff rushed in with blankets and water. One maid fainting dead away at the sight, her body crumpling to the floor amid scattered floral petals, while another guest, a fellow tycoon from Gregory's investment circle, muttered in awe, "I've funded biotech miracles, but this beats anything in the lab." Jade, the catalyst of it all, stood resolute by the casket. Her tiny hand still clasped over Liam's, but exhaustion etched lines on her young face, her body swaying slightly from the toll of her journey days without proper food, the emotional strain of carrying this secret alone, until suddenly her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed in a heap, her frail form hitting the marble with a soft thud that cut through the frenzy. Gregory whirled around, scooping her up in his arms without hesitation, her weight feather-light against his broad frame. "Jade? Someone help her? Get water? Blankets? Anything?" Elena knelt beside them, gently patting the girl's cheeks. "Sweetie, wake up. Stay with us." As the butler's first aid kit was thrust forward, a damp cloth pressed to Jade's forehead, her breathing shallow but steady, a testament to her resilience forged on unforgiving streets. The paramedics burst through the archway minutes later, a team of 4 in crisp uniforms wheeling stretchers and equipment, their faces masks of professional calm cracking into wide-eyed astonishment. At the scene, a funeral turned resurrection, with Liam's chest now visibly moving in rhythmic, albeit weak patterns. "Sir, step aside. We'll take it from here," the lead medic said quickly, assessing Liam with a stethoscope and monitors that beeped to life, confirming a faint pulse. "Holy, he's got vitals low but present. Get him oxygen and IVs stat." They worked with precision, transferring Liam onto the stretcher amid the crowd's hushed reverence, while a second team attended to Jade, hooking her up to monitors that showed dehydration and fatigue, but no critical issues. Gregory rode in the ambulance with both children, the sirens wailing as they sped toward the city's premier hospital, a facility he'd partially funded through his ventures, his hand alternating between holding Liam's and stroking Jade's hair, whispering encouragements. "Hang in there, kids. You're both fighters." At the hospital, a swarm of specialists descended upon the emergency bay, whisking Liam into a private suite equipped with state-of-the-art scanners and life support systems, where tests revealed the astonishing truth: Lazarus syndrome, a rare phenomenon where circulation and respiration spontaneously resume after failed resuscitation attempts, often mistaken for death due to its subtlety. Cases so infrequent that many physicians went entire careers without encountering one, dismissed as medical folklore until proven otherwise. The lead cardiologist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, ironically sharing a name with Gregory's wife, explained in the sterile conference room charts and scans projected on screens. "Your son experienced a profound bradycardia from the arrhythmia dropping his heart rate to undetectable levels. Combined with shallow breathing, it mimicked clinical death. But his body was in a suspended state, waiting for a trigger, perhaps the emotional stimulus, or even just time to reboot." Gregory absorbed the information, relief washing over him like a tidal wave, but anger simmered beneath. And the original doctor missed this, signed off on death without deeper checks. Vasquez nodded gravely. "It's not unheard of in overwhelmed ERs. Protocols prioritize quick turnover. Especially with bed shortages, we see it more than we'd like." This ignited Gregory's investigative fire. He demanded records, pulling strings with his influence to access hospital logs and CCTV footage, uncovering a trail of haste. Rudd's shift notes showing pressure from administrators to clear rooms amid a surge in patients' emails, hinting at bonuses for efficiency, and a notation that Liam's case was flagged as non-viable, prematurely bypassing extended monitoring that might have caught the syndrome. Confronting Rudd in a tense hallway. Showdown, Gregory's voice thundered. "You nearly buried my boy alive for a bed rotation. What kind of monster prioritizes spreadsheets over a child's life?" Rudd, backed by hospital lawyers now hovering like vultures, sputtered apologies. "I followed guidelines. Vitals were flat for over an hour. We couldn't waste resources on false hope." But his deflection only fueled Gregory's resolve, vowing to expose the systemic rot through his networks, perhaps even launching a probe via his biotech holdings to reform protocols nationwide. Meanwhile, in the adjacent room, Jade stirred under soft blankets, evofluids, restoring her strength as Gregory sat by her bedside, gratitude overflowing. "You saved him, little one. How did you know? Really know? Jade." Her eyes, fluttering open, clutched her pendant weakly. "In my dream, last night, under the bridge where I sleep, I saw him through this heart. He was lost in the dark, crying for help, saying, 'Tell my daddy I'm here.' It felt real, like he was pulling me to come." Gregory's skepticism softened, touched by the mystical element that defied his rational world-seeing in Jade's intuition, a power that technology and wealth couldn't replicate, a street-honed empathy that had bridged the gap between life and presumed death. As Liam stabilized in intensive care, his monitors beeping steadily stronger, Gregory made a life-altering decision, consulting with Elena in hushed tones. "We can't let her go back to that life. She's family now." They initiated adoption proceedings that very night, pulling in top lawyers to navigate the bureaucracy, ensuring Jade would have a home education and security she'd never known. Her transformation beginning with a warm bath, fresh clothes from the hospital gift shop, and a promise of endless park visits without fear. The hospital buzzed with the miracle nurses peeking in with smiles, media alerts already leaking as reporters gathered outside, but Gregory shielded the children, focusing on the budding bond, Jade peeking into Liam's room, whispering encouragements as his fingers twitched in response. This chapter of revival and reckoning reshaped Gregory's priorities, turning his grief into purpose. The investigation into Rudd's negligence, gaining traction with board inquiries and potential charges for malpractice, while the billionaire envisioned broader changes, funding awareness campaigns on rare syndromes, donating to homeless youth programs in Liam's name, all sparked by the girl who'd arrived barefoot and left an indelible mark. As night fell, Gregory watched over both kids, their beds side by side, realizing that true wealth lay not in billions but in second chances, seized from the brink, the journey of healing, just beginning, amid the beeps and soft breaths that filled the room with renewed life. The soft hum of hospital machines faded into a distant backdrop, as dawn's first light filtered through the blinds of Liam's private room, casting a warm glow on his small face that had been pallid just hours before, now flushed with the subtle return of life, his eyelids fluttering open for the first time since the collapse. Those bright blue eyes, mirrors of Gregory's own, blinking against the unfamiliar brightness before focusing on his father's tear-streaked face, hovering close. "Daddy," Liam whispered, his voice raspy and weak from disuse, but carrying the innocent timbre that had always melted Gregory's heart during story time or backyard adventures. The billionaire, who had faced down ruthless competitors in billion-dollar deals without flinching, shattered completely in that moment. collapsing forward to envelop his son in a gentle embrace, sobs racking his broad shoulders as he murmured, "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here, and I'm never letting go again." Lena rushed in from the hallway where she'd been fetching coffee. Her cup clattering to the floor as she joined the hug, the family reunited in a tangle of arms and whispered assurances, the air thick with relief and unspoken gratitude for the second chance that had seemed impossible mere days ago. Nurses peeked in with smiles, giving them space, while monitoring vitals that now pulsed strong and steady, the cardiologist confirming Liam's full recovery trajectory, no lasting damage from the arrhythmia, just a need for rest and follow-up care, a miracle wrapped in medical rarity that left the staff buzzing with awe. In the adjoining room, Jade awoke to a world transformed, her once grimy overalls replaced by soft hospital pajamas, a tray of warm oatmeal and fresh fruit at her bedside, luxuries she'd only dreamed of during nights huddled under bridges or in park alcoves. Gregory entered quietly, pulling up a chair with a gentle smile. "How's our hero feeling this morning?" Jade sat up slowly, her heart-shaped pendant gleaming under the lights, eyes wide at the kindness in his voice, unaccustomed to adults who saw her as more than a nuisance. "Better. Is Liam okay?" she asked, her concern for the boy who'd befriended her overriding her own discomfort, and Gregory nodded, tears welling anew. "Thanks to you, yes, he's awake and asking about his secret park friend. You've given us everything, Jade, and from now on you're part of this family." And in the adoption process, expedited by Gregory's influence and a team of lawyers who worked through the night, formalized what fate had already decreed, Jade Wellingham, with a bedroom waiting in the estate overlooking the gardens, complete with toys, books, and a window seat for stargazing, her days of scavenging replaced by school enrollments, warm meals, and the security of parents who cherished her intuition as a gift. As Liam grew stronger over the following days, discharged to home care with Jade by his side, the two children bonded like siblings, forged in fire, playing board games in sunlit playrooms, sharing stories of their park meetings under blankets forts, Liam teaching Jade about constellations, while she showed him how to carve simple toys from everyday scraps, their laughter echoing through halls that had been silent with grief. The story exploded across global headlines, viral videos, and news segments dubbing it "The Miracle at the Mausoleum," with reporters camped outside the estate gates interviewing experts on Lazarus syndrome and debating the role of faith versus science. Gregory, ever the strategist, channeled the attention into purpose, announcing the launch of the Liam and Jade Foundation at a press conference, streamed worldwide, a non-profit dedicated to supporting homeless children, funding shelters with state-of-the-art facilities, educational programs, and medical outreach to prevent overlooked cases like Liam's, starting with a multi-million-dollar endowment from his personal fortune and partnerships with his venture capital network to scale impact across cities. Donations poured in, inspired by the tale of a billionaire humbled and a street child, elevated the foundation's first initiative, breaking ground on a community center in the very park where Liam and Jade had met, complete with safe sleeping pods, counseling services, and art workshops to nurture young talents often ignored. Dr. Mason Rudd's downfall unfolded swiftly in the shadow of this uplift, his resignation tendered amid a hospital board investigation that uncovered patterns of rushed diagnoses in underprivileged cases, leading to formal charges of medical negligence and malpractice lawsuits filed not just by Gregory, but by other families who'd suffered similar oversights. The doctor's once sterling reputation crumbling under public scrutiny, a cautionary tale of how systemic pressures could erode ethical boundaries. Gregory watched it all from his study, legal updates, scrolling on screens, but his focus shifted inward, reflecting on the profound lessons etched into his soul. Through this ordeal, he'd built an empire on judging potential by metrics and appearances, investing in polished pitches while overlooking the raw humanity in the margins. Yet it was Jade, dismissed by society as insignificant, who'd pierced the veil of certainty, her empathy and persistence saving his world when wealth and expertise had failed. This realization reshaped him, prompting quiet evenings with Elena, discussing how to instill these values in their children, teaching Liam and Jade that true strength lies in kindness, that every person, regardless of background or status, carries inherent worth capable of sparking change. The educational ripple extended beyond their home, woven into the Foundation's mission programs, encouraging communities to support street kids through simple actions like volunteering at shelters, donating essentials, or advocating for policy reforms in healthcare, to mandate extended monitoring, in ambiguous cases emphasizing the power of listening to intuition. Jade's, Summy's, dream vision. A reminder that gut feelings, often dismissed in a data-driven age, can reveal truths machines miss. Gregory addressed audiences at TED-like talks, sponsored by the Foundation, sharing candidly, "We live in a world quick to label and discard, but this experience taught me that miracles emerge from the overlooked. By valuing every voice, especially the quiet ones, we not only save lives, but build a more compassionate society. Start small, believe in the impossible, and act on empathy, for one child's whisper can echo into global transformation." Months later, as the family gathered for a picnic in their new community center, Liam and Jade racing across the grass with other kids from the program. Gregory felt a peace deeper than any boardroom victory. The lesson crystallized that wealth's true measure is in uplifting others, urging everyone to examine biases, trust instincts over protocols, when lives hang in balance, and foster environments where no child sleeps cold or unheard. Proving that from the ashes of near tragedy, education in humanity can illuminate paths to a better world for all. If this tale moved you, remember, kindness costs nothing but changes everything. Reach out to a local charity today. Listen a little closer tomorrow, and know that your actions, no matter how small, hold the potential for profound impact.